Dan Ige versus Bryce Mitchell just wrapped up, and I've got to say that was definitely one of the most interesting post-fight interviews I've ever seen. Not just post-fight interviews, one of the most interesting intros I've ever seen. Bryce Mitchell was screaming, holding a Bible, screaming, "Freedom! Freedom!" Like that. Like that's literally what Bryce Mitchell was doing. Uh, yeah, I've never seen that before. I know Bryce Mitchell's a very devout Christian, but I really didn't expect to see any of that. So the fight itself, we'll get into the fight itself. The post-fight interview and the pre-fight introduction was probably more interesting the fight than the fight itself, but still, Bryce Mitchell just sort of dominated with his wrestling. Arguably, though, you could give that fight to Dan Ige on the damage because Bryce Mitchell didn't do any damage at all on the ground, really. Dan Ige, on the other hand, cut his eye, was landing some heavy shots, but still, I do think Bryce Mitchell probably won that, but there is an argument that Dan Ige did do the more damage, but yeah, the strikes are close, so it's not like a robbery. I think that was a close fight. I don't think 30-27 Bryce Mitchell is a genuine scorecard. I don't think that makes sense, but judges are weird. I do think Dan Ige, I don't know, it's weird. Dan Ige landed more damaging shots, but also Bryce Mitchell did have a lot of submission attempts, and he did land some ground and pound. He could have made that so much more clear though. When he was on top mount, if he just landed some more heavy shots, he could have clearly won that, like a lot more clearly. But still, I did have that for Bryce Mitchell, but arguably you could give that to Danny Go and damage. But still, let's get into that post-fight interview. That was more interesting than the fight itself. So Bryce Mitchell gets his Bible. He he goes over to Dan Ige and he tells him, "We're gonna pray together. We're gonna do a prayer." And then Dan Ige wanted to get out of there, obviously, because he's just lost the fight. And then then Bryce Mitchell's like, "You ain't going nowhere. You stay here, and we're gonna do a prayer together." He pretty much said that, and then he starts talking to Bisping about how he's gonna donate $5,000 to Dan Ige and the people of Hawaii, which is really nice. That's really good of Bryce Mitchell. He says that, yeah, that he's gonna donate, and then he went on a rant about how that the fires in Hawaii, I believe they were man-made. I don't believe there were no natural circumstances around them. I think they were man-made, is what he pretty much said. So he said that, and then he says, and then so Bisping went to walk off, and then he's like, let Dan Ige do his prayer. Let him do his prayer. And then Dan Ige was like, no. And then they did a little prayer in the octagon afterwards, which was nice to see. But yeah, very, very interesting. Bryce Mitchell honestly is becoming like the new Diego Sanchez. That's the best way I can think of him as. Like he is the Arkansas Diego Sanchez. Because this was the most Diego. This is like the most Diego Sanchez thing I've ever seen from somebody not named Diego Sanchez. Like I remember when Diego Sanchez walked out with a fucking cross, like he was about to fight vampires. Honestly, it reminded me of that. But it was very cool. I liked it. I like when fighters show some personality, and Bryce Mitchell definitely showed some personality there. Screaming freedom, freedom. Uh, yeah, I don't know what's next for Bryce Mitchell, honestly. Maybe you could do him versus like a Josh Emmett, maybe. Or you could do him versus Giga Chikadze, sorry. The Korean Zombie's gone, so you can't do him. Maybe him versus you could rebook him versus Evloev, maybe. I don't think Mosfar's booked against anybody. They were meant to fight, and it'd be interesting to see if he did beat Evloev, if he would try and do a prayer, or if he'd try and like convert him to Christianity, maybe. I don't know. Instead of Fug Nasty, he should become the preacher, Bryce Mitchell, because yeah, he was, he's preaching quite a bit out there, which, respect to him. The man's dedicated to his faith. He's not being like radical with it. He's not calling for violence or anything, so can't hate on him for that. But yeah, definitely very interesting. It's up there for one of the most interesting post-fight interviews. I'll tell you that much. And definitely one of the most interesting introductions to a fight. Dan Ige, maybe you could do Dan Ige versus Alex Caceres. I think that would make some sense. That'd be a cool fight, actually. Alex Caceres versus Dan Ige, winnable fight for both men, so that would make a lot of sense. Or you could do Dan Ige versus Lerone Murphy. I guess Lerone Murphy does deserve like a step up the rankings at this point, but I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Fug Nasty. Fight itself, not the most entertaining fight. Some really slick grappling though from Bryce Mitchell. He had like the back position, like it looked like he was about to fall off, and then he somehow, very slick, I will say, got Dan Ige's back, and that was really cool to see actually. So yeah, really slick grappling from Bryce Mitchell, but not the most entertaining fight. I like grappling, but there was not really much ground and pound of note in that fight, but still really fun fight. Not a really fun fight. What am I saying? Really fun post-fight interview, I meant. Yeah, very, very fun post-fight interview from Bryce Mitchell. Well, I mean, I guess not completely fun because he is talking about the fires and everything, but interesting post-fight interview. Uh, yeah, the Bryce Mitchell, certainly one of the most interesting characters. I want to see a Bryce Mitchell, Sean Strickland podcast one day. I think that would break the internet. I think that'd be amazing. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you after the main event.